Hello and welcome to our presentation on ethical fashion and how it is changing young adults' online consumption and behaviour. Presented by Nancy, Lilia, Anwar, Alexis and Ken. Ethical fashion can be defined as the production and distribution that focuses on reducing harm to the planet and people. It benefits those working along the supply chain and creates a better future for everyone. Ethical fashion is quite a recent discovery and is concerned with the social impact and ethics behind a brand's label and can be considered to be the opposite of fast fashion. It is also concerned with underpaying employees, unsafe factories, working conditions, fair living wage, and more. In the recent rise of fast fashion, there has been an increase in the interest of sustainable fashion to combat this trend, as the high-speed, low-value clothing has now become a significant environmental issue and has implications on the planet. Due to this, ethical fashion communities started to form online to start to think more about what they buy and try to reduce the impact of their purchases. There has been a growing success of sustainable and ethical fashion and its ability to educate, share good and bad stories about brands, alert consumers to the wide range of choice that there is, create communities, allow individuals to become important influencers in this area and to impact others and spread the word.
So, in a short literature review, we found that most papers investigated consumer perceptions of ethical fashion and the factors that influence them. Expectedly, there were of course some papers which differed from that and converged onto other focuses, like brands and their social responsibility to facilitate ethical consumer purchasing, or finding differences between a non-ethical apparel consumer and an ethical one. Now, a lot of these studies we found were often region-based, meaning that their results were limited in generalizing their findings to the broader online fashion community. And more importantly, there were no ethnographic studies on the subculture of ethical fashion. So, this is a gap in knowledge for both academics and corporations alike. Furthermore, we established one primary paper as a basis of our work as we found it to be the most relevant to our study. And this particular paper involved a ethnography on the online fashion community in Kosovo. This paper generalized fashion to one whole community and subsequently looked over its nuances in these smaller subcultures within it, which we can then address instead. And because this was an ethnographic study involving fashion, we could use its tools and methods to expand its work towards the unaddressed subculture of ethical fashion. Moving on, here is a visualization of our topic in the form of a landscape map.
The sites that will be studied through deferred actions of the maintenance of the community are Instagram and Reddit, which has provided affordances for interactions on ethical fashion. Reddit gives users a sense of belonging to be open and honest, as there is an active ethical fashion community comprising of 46,163 members. The share button and comment section are an avenue for public interaction involving new opinions daily, which promotes the exchange of ideas where anyone can contribute and respond to comments. On Instagram, the hashtag ethical fashion has a total of 5,922,000 shared posts of videos, photos, hashtags, and memes, which boost the popularity of related hashtags that are about ethical fashion and signifies that an active subculture exists, plus enables people with an interest in fashion to connect with other users who share similar interests to make better ethical fashion decisions. These are evident by the link showed for both Instagram and Reddit on this slide. On the next slide, evidence shown through hashtags, memes, and pictures demonstrates that an active community exists. The themes that were recurrent for ethical fashion were poor working conditions and low wages of workers who produce clothes for unethical fashion brands, pollution of the environment and child labor, practice of upcycling, closed loop and reuse, which can be promoted through ethical fashion And lastly, animal cruelty, which can be avoided by purchasing from ethical fashion brands.
So which datasets and ethnographic methods are appropriate for this research? In this research, our datasets are fashion designers, influencers, and also fashion consumers who congregate in an online ethical fashion community on Reddit and engage with Instagram's hashtag ethical fashion. The most suitable ethnography research methods for conducting research on ethical fashion is one-to-one in-depth interviews and focus groups conducted online via MS Teams or Zoom. For this research, we would interview 5 influencers, 5 fashion designers, and also 5 focus groups, in which each group would consist of 7 participants. The qualitative nature of in-depth interviews and focus groups enable the researcher to understand consumers' preferences in the decision-making process, and also can give a great insight into why people choose ethical fashion. Therefore, with in-depth interviews and focus groups, this research will enable us to explore the values and motivations behind ethical fashion consumption and can give an actual insight into purchasing behavior.
There are ethical challenges that must be considered when using these methods of data. First, I will investigate the focus group methodology that generates distinct ethical challenges that do not correspond fully to those raised by one-to-one interviews. The principal challenge in obtaining consent lies in giving a clear account of what will take place in a group, owing to the unpredictability of the discussion and interaction. As consent can be seen creating appropriate expectations in a participant, this may therefore be hard to achieve. Moreover, it is less straightforward for the participant to revoke consent than in one-to-one interviews. Confidentiality and anonymity are potentially problematic because of the researcher's limited control over what participants may subsequently communicate outside the group. If the group discussion encourages over-disclosure by some participants, this problem becomes more acute. Finally, a harm in a focus group may arise from the discussion of sensitive topics, which the public nature of the discussion might amplify. A balance should be struck between avoiding or closing potentially distressing discussions and silencing the voices of certain participants, to whom such discussion may be essential or beneficial. For in-depth interviews, privacy is a significant problem, as interviews sometimes probe unexpected areas. For similar reasons, it is not easy to give complete information about the nature of a separate interview at the outset. Hence, informed consent is problematic. When a pair is interviewed, such as carer and cared for, there are significant difficulties in maintaining confidentiality and protecting privacy. The potential for interviews to harm participants emotionally is noted in some papers, although this is often set against potential therapeutic benefits. As well as the generic issues, there are some ethical issues specific to in-depth interviews. The problem of the dual role is noted in many papers. It can take many forms. An interviewer might be a nurse, researcher, a scientist and counselor, or a reporter and evangelist. There are other specific issues, such as taking sides in an interview and protecting vulnerable groups. Little specific study of the ethics of in-depth interviews has then taken place. However, that has shown some important findings. For example, one study shows participants are not averse to discussing painful issues provided they feel the study is worthwhile. Some papers make recommendations for researchers. One such is that they should consider using a model of continuous or process consent, rather than viewing consent as occurring once, at the signature prior to the interview.
Finally, how can our study be relevant to marketing research? Well, as stated, we're addressing the whole ethical fashion community, so the key advantage is that our results can be generalizable. Moreover, the ethical fashion culture is becoming a prominent subgenre of fashion that more and more corporations are paying attention to. And as it's now becoming an emerging sector of the fashion market, our studies may prove beneficial to those actors in boosting awareness of ethical fashion and its significance to consumers. Even more so, the use of online communities, especially that of ethical fashion, can demonstrate their potential as a source for market research and will hopefully encourage more ethnographic studies also. That's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.